And now we're ready to kick it off. We are like right on time, and we can go ahead and go live here in just a second. Are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
All righty. Well, hello. I'm very excited today to introduce with you Deb Miller, she's a life organization coach. I'll let you kind of explain all your company names and everything. But she's here to talk to us about taming the paperwork monster today. And Life's Co-Pilot, we like to bring experts in to talk to you to help you with your processes here. So Deb, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you just kind of roll with it.
Great, thank you. I'm Deb Miller, and my company is Ready Habits, and also lifeorganizercoach.com. And the reason for the two names is Life Organizer Coach started this whole mess because I needed a way to organize my own paperwork following an illness of my husband. And I was living in Fort Wayne, and he was in a hospital in Indianapolis, and it was just a mess trying to get everything organized. So that's where it all started. And Ready Habits really is how I can help people be prepared for everyday emergencies. And everyday emergencies happen to everybody at the drop of a hat. You never know when it's going to happen. And so it's important to be ready and for anything that comes along. And part of that process is making sure that you have all of your documentation and your paperwork and all of that kind of stuff organized.
Okay. So basically tell me what is, so tell me what how are you going to do this? How are we going to tame the, but before we do that, I want to let you do something else. You also do something else too. You are also into crisis management, or, as far as that goes, for physical and storms and stuff. You have something coming up. I want to let you introduce it at the beginning of the thing, and we'll do it again later. So people listening. So you have an event coming up.
Well, actually, that event is full, so we're not going to be adding anybody to it. So
okay, well then never mind. But anyway, okay.
Yeah, well, what we do is I help people get ready for disasters. And so I'm part of a couple of organizations that go and help out during times of disaster. A local one in Hamilton County is the CERT program, which is the Community Emergency Response Team. And what we do is we prepare for emergencies so that we can help until professional help arrives. So we would be working in our neighborhoods or in an area that was affected by a disaster. And we prepare for that year round by doing different classes and by participating in events in the community. So for example, during the parades, you'll often see us in our yellow vests manning the barricades at the streets or walking through the crowds, offering services. If somebody needs some help, we do we run the shred day out at the Hamilton County Fairgrounds every year. There's a couple of events that go on. So I'm involved in that kind of those kinds of organizations where we go out and, we help in the community until if there's a need. And by doing that, we get prepared to help other people. And so the CERT program is very viable in Hamilton County. There's a lot of us that are around, and over 100 people in 7 strike teams. So it's a fairly big organization, and we do good work.
Well, I was going to give you a chance to promote your event, but it sounds like it was doing really great. But I'm glad that people now know more about what you're doing, and they can reach out to you if they are interested in that kind of stuff as well. So
absolutely.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you on your stream of thought, but so I'll let you get back to fixing the paperwork here. So
that's great. So I do have a PowerPoint, if you don't mind, if I share my screen.
Go right ahead.
Would that help? Let's see.
Where should be a little green button there at the bottom.
Yep. How about that? Can you see? Perfect. My PowerPoint? It's smaller than normal. So, Okay, so yeah, taming the document monster is really an important thing for everybody to do because you never know when something's going to happen. And it happened, we think about things that happen to us all the time, but why is this an important thing to do? And the first thing is it saves us time. I don't know how many times I've gone to people's houses and they're digging through piles and piles of paper on their desks. They have piles on the floor. Their filing cabinets are stuffed with papers that don't have any use anymore. They're old, they're out of date, they're not something that we need to use anymore. It helps to reduce clutter. And if you think about it, if you're in a cluttered environment, for most of us anyway, that is very stressful. If you have a lot of stuff, a lot of unorganized organization just laying around on your desks and in your house, it becomes a problem because it reduces your stress, increases your stress levels, which makes it really hard for you to function in a time of an emergency. And it also gives you peace of mind if you have it all organized, because other people can come in and help you out. So if it's your children, if you're the caregiver for your parents, that allows you to step in and take care of things that need to happen when it's an unclear situation and things just happen. Case in point, a friend of mine a week ago Monday, she and her sister were in this terrible car accident. One of them ended up in the hospital and the other one ended up in the rehab hospital. They were the caregivers for each other. So having both of them in the hospital meant that there was really nobody to be an advocate for them or to take care of their, go to the house, take care of the things that needed to be done. So I spent 2 days in Fort Wayne taking care of people who, fortunately, they were pretty well organized, but for the most part, you never know when that stuff can happen, and it happens frequently. And it doesn't take much to put somebody in a hospital for a few days or a few weeks, and that can be a catastrophic event for almost, for anyone. And it happens really quickly and without any warning. And that's just the stuff, the day-to-day stuff. We live in, it's thunderstorming out right now. We may lose power, who knows? And if it stays out for a long period of time, like during the winter, if we have ice storms or something like that, it can really be dangerous for us. And making sure that we're prepared, both having our paperwork and stuff organized in case we have to leave the house for a while, or if we're involved in a severe thunderstorm or straight line winds or something that makes us leave our house for an extended period of time. Those are all issues that can come up. So the first thing I want you to do is get your mind straight, because getting paperwork organized is something that most people don't like to do, don't want to do. It's the furthest thing from their minds. They don't, they just don't think about it. And when we talk about mindset, I'm talking about the way we think. It's a set of beliefs, attitudes, and perceptions that shape how we interpret and respond to the world around us. So if you think and you have this mindset that, that paperwork is difficult to manage, it's going to be difficult for you to manage. And if you have an attitude that, I don't, it's not going to make a difference, someday it may make a difference to you in your life if you don't have it organized and have everything ready. So, sorry. I'm getting all kinds of weird things on my phone today.
It's always that kind of timing.
Oh, it is. And I don't get calls all day, and then all of a sudden I get 5 during a call. So I apologize, folks. But keep in mind that your thoughts have power. If you think it's going to be difficult, it's going to be difficult. And it doesn't have to be. Getting your paperwork organized can be a very simple process if you just do it a little at a time. And remember, slow progress is still progress. So no matter how long it takes you to do, just by scheduling it something every day that you're doing a small piece can make a huge difference in just a short period of time. So the first thing we do is set up some kind of an organizing system. And it doesn't have to be very fancy. It can be just something simple. Just make sure that it's in a convenient location. And I like to have them close by a shredder so that when you get something in the mail, you don't want to just toss, you can just throw it in the shredder and you don't have to worry about it. I think about organizing in categories. So I have things that need to be stored long-term, tax returns, legal documents, some of your financial information you may want to keep long-term so that you can prove capital gains and stuff like that. So you have things that you have to do that you want to have long-term storage. And then you have things that come in and you've got paperwork that are things that you need to do as soon as possible. So that would be things like paying your bills. If you get, bills that come in still in paper form, or you get them electronically, you still have to do something with them as soon as possible. You don't, so you want to put those in a location where you can get to them and handle them when it's appropriate. I had someone tell me once that you should only look at your bank account twice, the beginning of the month and the middle of the month, because anytime you spend a lot of time in between doing, paying bills and doing whatever, you're wasting a lot of time. So you should, try to get yourself organized so that you're writing checks or in your bank accounts a couple of times a month. Then you get stuff in the mail that you should recycle immediately. So the flyers, the political ads, all the stuff that comes in on a regular basis, you need to get rid of that and put it in the recycling bin right away. I know of people who stack that stuff up on a counter, and it gets to the point where it starts to fall over, or they're knocking it over, and that just adds to that clutter and makes it more difficult for people. An easy thing to do is create a file for each family member. So if you have medical bills that come in, you can just tuck that medical information, reports, that kind of stuff in the file for each family member. When were the vaccinations, when, what insurance needs to be paid, that kind of thing. So you could create a file for each member of your family. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Go ahead.
No, it's all right.
I was just sitting there thinking that, I have worked really, really, really hard to eliminate all paper in my life. Okay. So I have, starting in, I hit 2010, maybe 2008, I started eliminating all paper. And I use paper when I'm doing a job. And then the second that job is done, I throw it away because I can take it and scribble notes and stuff on it, things that I need to do. But once I'm finished with that, when I'm done with it, but I'm sitting there thinking, I've got files for different family members and different accounts and stuff, but they're all digital. And
that's it.
If the power goes out, or if the cell towers go, because they're all in clouds, I can get to them eventually, but if the whole area is down, I could not. So
yeah, that's why I recommend having at least one paper copy of things, so that you at least have phone numbers and account numbers and that kind of information, so that if something does happen, you have something to refer to. Because if a cell phone goes, your cell service goes down, your internet goes down, you may not even be able to pay your bills because everything is, online. Do you
Yeah.
even paper checks anymore?
Well, yeah, I haven't used a paper check for me. I don't know how long. I have to do a couple things for my uncle. I run his accounts,
Yeah.
but yeah. So I'm thinking as you're talking here. So, but I
So,
worked really, really hard to get rid of all the paper.
and most people do, but those of us like your uncle or some older folks if you've got parents, they may not be comfortable getting rid of all of all the paper statements and things like that. They really do want a paper physical copy that they can look at and read. You got to do something with it. And so younger folks are much better at the electronic versions than some of the older people that.
Well, thank you for including me with the younger ones, even though I know where my birthday comes in. But anyway, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, when you're thinking about categories too, it varies by family. So for you've got your uncle's papers, so he would have a file and you'd have to have categories for him. You've got your own family stuff. If you've got and if you're an entrepreneur and have a small business, you're going to have all of that kind of information. And some of that's the same as what you're going to have as an individual, but there's some things that might be different that you want to pay attention to if you're an entrepreneur and have a small business. So you think about the categories that are most important for your family. So for example, do you have a pet? So you might have a category of pet health information, the vet, the medications that your dog or your cat or your bird or your fish take. All of that kind of information needs to be categorized and kept in some place. So there's healthcare, and then you've got your household categories, your mortgage, your insurance, your utilities, all of that kind of information. And having it electronically is great, but you should really also have a piece of paper that has all those account numbers on it in case you have to get to it. And then there's your financial categories like banking, your investments, your retirement accounts, your IRAs, your investments, depending on who you use. Sometimes you can get those fairly easily, and you might be able to get them on a phone even if you don't have access to an internet at your house. But that's a little more risky by accessing it on a handheld device than if you were doing it on a computer at home. So what are you going to include in all of this information? So you've got to have your insurance. So do you have house insurance and car insurance and boat insurance and motorcycle insurance and renter's insurance? And do you have a storage unit? Do you have insurance on your storage unit? All of that kind of stuff, life insurance, your health insurance, all of that, you need to make sure that you have information. Healthcare information is really important. So think about, do you know who your doctors are? Mine change about every year and a half because the practice changes doctors. And so my doctor may be different every time I go in because I go through a different practice. But do you know who all the healthcare providers are for you? You probably have a general practitioner, and you might have a pediatrician if you've got small kids. You might have an elder care person. You might have home health. You might have all kinds of different types of health care, and all of that information should be somewhere that's available for you. And then making sure that you have copies of your credit cards, both front and back, so that if you lose your wallet, something happens, you actually have that information available so that you can call and report a card stolen. A lot of people don't have that information right at hand. And so think about it. How many credit cards do you carry in your wallet? How many other kinds of cards are there that you have that
Who, me? I've got a personal bank I got a credit card, I've got a debit card, and I've got a company credit card.
Okay. So, but what about the Kohl's and the
Oh,
Target?
I got rid of those in the 90s. I haven't had a single one of those kind of things forever.
There are a lot of people out there who carry around 10 credit cards.
Yeah, I have those three. That is, I don't like anything beyond that. So
Yep. But that, if you've got family members who have credit cards too,
yeah.
what are their numbers? All of that information. Do you have a mortgage? Is it paid? Is it scheduled to be paid? Do you have to pay it on a regular basis? There's a lot of that kind of stuff that, you need to have some kind of information about. Do you have your legal documents? Do you have a will? Where do you keep your will? Who has copies of it? Does your attorney probably kept a copy if you went through an attorney to create it? Do you have a durable power of attorney? Do you have healthcare and financial powers of attorney? Those are important documents to have, and keeping a copy of them somewhere you can get to them is really important. One of the things that I do, just grab my book. I keep a red folder that has copies of our wills, all of the important documents that we would need, so that if I go to a hospital, or we have to get some kind of health care outside of our normal doctors, I have everything in this folder that I need to take with me. So it's got things like the names of my current doctors, the medications that we take, that kind of information. So having that information in a written form that you can get to easily is important. Here's one that most people don't even think about, is who are the family and friends that need to be notified if something happens to you, or your family, member of your family. So for example, I have some really good friends that my husband probably doesn't know how to get a hold of, because they're my friends.
Yep.
The same with him. There might be family members that you need to contact if you go to the hospital, and if they find out you're in the hospital or something has happened, they're going to be angry because you didn't call them. You've got those kinds of people in your life. Do you have a copy? Where's your passport and your physical social security card? Everybody needs to have a social security card. That's a paper physical card. You'll need it for Medicare and Medicaid going forward.
What's funny about that is I don't know if I ever had one, or if I lost it when I was in high school or whatever it was, but I just got one again just last year, so I could get the things figured out for Medicare. So, I've not had one for literally since high school. So for some reason, I never needed it until now.
Yeah, that's true. So, what about all your your passwords?
That's a good one.
Because if something goes wrong, you can't get to your password organizer without having access to your master passport or password information. So I do have a physical copy of my passwords, so that if I go somewhere, I can take them with me without having to worry about getting into my LastPass or my Robo Help, those kinds of situations.
Do you update those because like a lot of the sites, like bank sites and stuff, require you to change them like every quarter, so I have created a system that I can do that where it's easy to remember. But do you have to do that every time as well, or?
I do.
Okay.
Because otherwise you're going to be, oh my gosh, what is that password? And it happens all the time. I was at my friend's house, and I had to change my iTunes, my iTunes account, and I couldn't remember the darn password, and it wouldn't let me recreate one because I already had an account using
Right.
the email address. So it gets to be pretty important to make sure that you know where to get those if you need them. And where do you pay bills? Do you go through your bank? Do you have individual bills that come automatic, are scheduled automatically by the company? You know, some people have utilities that are automatically taken out of their checking account every month. That's not something I would do necessarily, because I want to know what's coming out and what's due, and making sure I'm on top of that. So if something would happen to me, somebody would have to go in and make sure that all of that stuff is taken care of. And there might be some other things that you can think of. Do you have a second house? You know, we've got some folks in this area who are snowbirds. Spend 6 months down in Florida, 6 months in Indiana. And during that time, you know, you've almost got to have 2 sets of documents, because you've got documents for all the house stuff in Florida and all the house stuff up here. And it might be that you're trying to keep track of stuff for a family member. So it isn't necessarily if you're a snowbird, but it could be that you're paying attention to your mom or your dad's house and all of their bills and requirements. So it's a lot of information sometimes to take care of. So I suggest people do what we call a grab and go binder. And basically that's all of your important papers and critical information in one place. And the reason you would do that is so that if you have to go somewhere, you have a physical copy of the information that you can take with you. And basically it's ready to go in an instant. So what I do is, this is mine. I have one. And it's basically just a 3-ring binder with a zipper around the outside of it. And I like that because I can use the pages that have the plastic insert pages, so that you can just tuck the documents right inside of it and keep a physical copy organized, and it won't fall out of the binder as you're working on it. So this binder also has a like a file, accordion file, so you can just dump your papers in there until you're ready to sort them. So use what you have. You know, I have the binder because I like it, but doesn't mean that that's the only thing you can use. You could use a briefcase. Maybe you've got a wheeled computer bag or a suitcase that you're not using. You could use that for that kind of information. Scrapbooking storage boxes, even an Amazon box, just as long as you've got everything put in one place. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just make sure that you're starting to put it together. So you've got it all together. Now, what do you do with it? So you can keep it at a lot of different places. You could put it on a closet shelf. If you put it in a binder and you've got a label on the binder, you could just tuck it behind the furniture, or in with the cookbooks, or somewhere that it isn't obvious. I would keep a copy of the most important stuff in a go bag that you're gonna, if you have to leave your house. You know, in some areas it's more important than around here necessarily, but having a go bag ready and having that information in the bag is really a good idea. You can put scanned documents on a thumb drive. So those of you who have electronic information, the problem with that is if the power is down, or if the bank gets destroyed, you don't want it to have your only copy of everything. You want to make sure you have redundant copies of some of this information. You could give it to your a trusted child or your financial advisor or attorney or someone like that. Some people don't like to have other family members know much about their own business, so they keep it. But if you have it available, if they need it, it's a good idea. So yeah, keeping it safe is really important. So you don't want to put a false binder, or you could put a false label on your binder. Just make sure your kids or whoever needs to get that information knows what you've labeled it, so they don't have to go through all the binders in your house. Make a backup and store it, but don't store it on your computer. So you want to make sure that you're not, so if somebody gets into your computer, you get hacked, your computer dies on you for some reason, that information isn't gone. And, putting stuff in the cloud is good and bad. Sometimes just putting stuff in a storage location on, using your iPhone or Google isn't quite as secure as maybe you think it is. So I would use a secure encrypted site like LastPass or something like that. It uses the same encryption banks do, so that your information is more protected.
Well, it's like one thing people don't realize, like, if you use a place like DocuSign or DigiSign or whatever, they are very well encrypted and safe. But if you stick them into like Dropbox or what have you, it's open to pretty much anybody who wants it.
Yeah, especially if you've shared those folders with people, they can be shared. Yeah. People can download all of that kind of information. So yeah, use an encrypted site that's really safe, and if you're going to store your information like that. So I created my Life Organizer, and it's a book to keep track of all of that information in one place. It allows you to write down those numbers and make sure that you have contact information, for all of the information. And it also helps you walk through the process to organize the information, because if you go page by page, you will fill out everything you need to know and need to keep. Some of it won't apply to you, and that's fine. But for the most part, if you go through the process and fill out the pages in the book, you're going to be very well organized and have a really good system for keeping track of all of that information. And if you need help, I have a coaching program. I can coach you through the process and help you get organized and stay organized, and help you work through how do you eat an elephant? How do you get started? Where do you begin? It's one little piece at a time. And it could be an email reminder that I send to you on a regular basis that says, hey, what have you done today? How have you kept, how have you organized this part of your life? Or it could be just me sitting on the phone with you, talking you through a few things. So I do have a coaching program that I work with people. I also have a done with you and a done for you service. So for example, if you have family members who are in town but you don't have time, or you live out of state or out of the city, I can be that proxy for you and go in and help get people organized. And nothing ever leaves their house. I don't take stuff home with me or anything like that. Everything is organized right there at your place. That's why I say done for or done with you. I can help you walk through the process or actually do it for you, depending on what you need. We talk about the things that are important, the documents that you should keep, the ones that you can get rid of. I think my mother had 25 years worth of canceled checks when she passed away, because she never threw a check away. She would write checks every month, and the bank would send them to her and she would keep them. They don't do that so much anymore, but now that's something that people still have around. They have those kinds of documents. I have a portable scanner I bring. I can scan information in your documents right into a file right there for you. You keep all of the information. I don't keep any of it. It can go on a thumb drive, it can go on your computer, whatever works best for you. And sometimes people just need help setting up things like online bill paying, how to file your paperwork, what needs to happen. And those are all things that I can help people with. It's sometimes more difficult for people to understand, where do you keep your passwords? How do you secure a site? All of that kind of stuff. So that's what I do. You have any questions?
Oh, sure. Well, I was just, there's a lot of different things that, trying to figure out things. With what I do for a living with carrying transitions, it's not uncommon for us to go into a house that maybe mom or dad had to go to assisted live, or maybe worse than that, maybe they're like memory care, or they are in a skilled living, or they are gone, they've passed. And so the kids then bring us in to try to help get control of the house. And you're right, I'll see houses that have taxes going back to 1970, having check stubs and the checkbooks. And I've seen them where they have the prescription sheets that of what goes on with the different prescriptions going back for decades. And the paperwork is terrifying when that comes in, and then you have to go through it and try to find out what is important to keep, what's important to get rid of, what has to be shredded, and it's we do it professionally, but we do it for a fee. It is overwhelming to go in there and do that. I'll bring a big team in to work on it, but it's like, I can't even imagine what someone's going through when they have to do that.
Oh, it's terrible. And you have to be really careful about just going through paperwork. People will sometimes tuck documents inside of other folders. You can't just rely that this folder has just this information in it. You need to go through all the folders, all the piles of paper, and make sure that something hasn't gotten inadvertently mixed in with something else. Just like my grandmother used to keep money in all her books.
Right.
Before we would get rid of books, we had to go through and literally fan through the books to make sure there wasn't any money tucked inside somewhere. That it wouldn't be.
My in-laws, when we were cleaning their house out, at the time I wasn't doing what I do now. Okay, so this was kind of my first foray into it, and they had been not in their home for 18 months. They'd been living in assisted living, kept thinking they were moving back, but we knew that probably was unlikely. And then we were getting ready to clean it out. The very first thing I thought I'd throw away was, at the time, everyone had a basket at the end of their couch with their magazines and newspapers. So I'm like, well, they've been sitting here for 18 months. I could definitely throw this whole thing away. And for some weird reason, I decided to go through it, and I found the deed to their house in there, which then alerted us we have to look through everything.
Well, if somebody has Alzheimer's, they probably don't think about what they're doing. When they're taking, moving papers, they might be looking for something, and going through stuff and moving stuff. And you really do have to pay really close attention to that. And it's really hard for people to understand. You get emotional when it's your parents,
Right.
or your family member. I can be less emotional when I go in and help somebody do something. We had problems with my husband's father when he passed away. His wife was a hoarder. And she had kept everything, including a 3-foot stack of Wall Street Journal newspapers at the end of the bed. She was going to read them. 3-foot.
Yeah.
3-foot tall stack. And she knew if you moved anything. So you really have to, you have to understand what the dynamics are of the family and help get through some of that kind of stuff.
So where do you recommend people start in this whole process? If they, I guess you can come to the conclusion that maybe I need to get organized, but then what, where do they go from there?
I would suggest taking a month and just gathering up the papers that come in the mail. Put a box on your desk or something, a file basket or something. You could get one of those pretty boxes at Michael's that have the lid on it and have flowers on the outside or something like that. And just every time you get something in the mail that's important, you put it in there first. Not all the junk stuff. All the junk stuff you want to get rid of. You want to get rid of all of that. Go back here. All the stuff that's long-term storage or something that you've paid right that month, and you've got a copy of your utility bill, or at the end of the year you're going to get your Medicare bills and that kind of stuff. Anything that's important, that's a bill or utility or something that you pay, I would put in that box. And then once you've gone through a month, then you will know what you have to pay and what the bills are. And that gives you one copy of that bill that has the address that you mail it to, all of the account numbers, what you normally would pay, that kind of stuff that gives you kind of that guideline. And start thinking about it in terms of, okay, I can do, this is long-term storage and this is stuff I have to do right away. And don't keep the stuff around that that needs to be recycled. Just get rid of it. Just recycle it right away. Don't stack it on the counter and let it accumulate for weeks, which I know happened.
So when they made that decision, they're starting to pull that together for that month. Do they then? They're looking at your stacks here, different ways to put things into categories. I mean, you told us about the book that you have. It kind of walks people through it as well, right?
Right. It gives you grab it. It's easier to grab and look at it. So it's got fill in the blanks. So it leads you through. And so the first thing in the book is, who are your emergency contacts? Who are the numbers that people need to contact if there's something happens? So if the EMS is called and the ambulance comes to your house, the first place they're going to look is on the refrigerator to see if there's a number on there that has, in case of an emergency, who do I contact? And so that information is really important. You might keep a copy of that in your wallet or your purse or your briefcase. The next thing is personal information. So, things like names and birth dates and social security numbers and driver's license numbers and your passport number and where do you store it? Are you an organ donor or not? Your father's name, your mother's name, where is your birth certificate located? Do you have an official birth certificate? A lot of times people are struggling to find those birth certificates because they may get one that they think is an official birth certificate, but it's really not. So you really need to make sure that you've got that information. And keep that kind of information for everybody in your family. If you've got children, you want to keep contact that kind of information for them. How about your grandchildren? You may want to be leaving them some money or something, and you need to have their legal information in order to do that. Do you have what's your primary residence? Do you live at home? Do you have a mortgage? Do you have a second mortgage? Do you have a reverse mortgage? Do you have property that has an equity line of credit on it? All of that kind of information If you rent, who's your landlord? Your insurance information, auto and stuff like that. And then your utilities, do you have a list of all your utilities? What's the phone number and where do you call and that kind of stuff? It's really helpful to have it in one place. This will fit in a safe deposit box if you fill it out and just want to tuck it in your safe deposit box somewhere or give it to a trusted advisor, a friend. Your doctors, your medical conditions, what surgeries have you had? As we get older, we start to have more and more of those kinds of things. And, do you take prescriptions? When were you vaccinated? Did you get all of those things that you're supposed to have? And when did you do it? So this book will guide you through the whole process. And if you just, start at the beginning and fill out the pages that are important, you're going to come up with most of the information that you need quickly in an emergency situation. And it can be in this kind of a book, or it can be in a binder. Just depends on what you're most comfortable with. A lot of times I start people off with the binder and the box, and then we move to this as the last way to organize all of the information. So they've got at least in two places.
So is the purpose of the binder in the box is it twofold? One, is it to gather all the stuff, and two, it's kind of like when you're doing an analysis on your diet or whatever, what you're putting in,
Yeah.
So you actually have a inventory.
It is. It really does give you, and you might keep stuff in this binder that is more important information for you. It could have your prescription eyeglasses, your prescription for your eyeglasses in here, have a physical copy. You don't need it very often, but it might be something that's important for you to keep. Your military discharge papers, stuff like that, if you've been in the military.
Well, those and people don't realize that how critical those are, maybe because, like, for instance, if somebody or their spouse, either one, that's a military spouse or a military individual, they want to go into VA aid and attendance to help pay for their assisted living or their in-home care, as they're older and need more support. That's big money that comes in on those. It's a lot of money. We're like at $2,500 a month, which makes a huge difference for people.
Yeah.
At least that's kind of today's rate. But if you don't have that document, your discharge paper, that black and with white print,
yeah,
you're going to have difficulty getting. And then on top of that, from what I understand, there was a fire back in the 70s at the VA location, and some of those documents are gone. So if you don't have them, they don't.
Yep, can't get them anymore. And that was before we started digitizing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping those lists and databases and whatever. So it's it's important to get organized and keep it. Once you're done, keeping it up is so much easier to do. It can take you a month or two to get it if you're working slowly through it and just doing a little at a time, which is perfectly acceptable because we don't expect something to happen. But like my friends, a car accident put them in the hospital for a week. Fortunately, they didn't have to have surgery, so it was only a week. But if you have a medical diagnosis that puts you in a hospital, or you have Alzheimer's, or you have some kind of dementia, or a diabetes that's uncontrolled, those kinds of things can really affect both your memory and what you do to keep organized. And having that information already done once makes it a whole lot easier for people.
Well, a lesson that I learned many years ago was I was VP of sales for a mid-size home builder. And we had two things happen that were like big wake up calls. So I mean, this is, this would apply to a small business owner or to a individual household. But one of the things that we had happen was our receptionist decided to go back to college. She was the lowest paid, but she left. And when she did, we had all kinds of things falling apart because no one knew the different tasks that she did, because different people assigned her a task, she'd taken it on. There was nothing written down. And when she left, all of a sudden those things just kind of started falling into a hole, because no one knew, right?
Yeah.
And then we had another situation where our VP of construction, who ran everything, and he was a walking code book. He knew every code of every county and every municipality in his head. He knew his construction schedule. We would be like building a 7-plex. He knew what was going on in each unit, and then different ones all across 9-county area. And he was in a bad motorcycle wreck and was gone for a few months. And oh my God, we were really scrambling. So we were all supposed to then write down everything you do. And there's some things you might do once a year, but you have to try to remember those things. And I definitely see the value of this, because those things could easily fall through the cracks.
Yeah, I did that for about 20 years. I worked with companies to try to document all of their procedures and their processes and get everything written down. And I would interview executives to find out what they did, what their responsibilities were the week before they were leaving their jobs, and trying to get it out of their head and into a document so people could understand what the role is. So yeah, that's a really critical piece. It's something I can still do for people, but it's not something I necessarily promote all that much. But, for a small business owner, you really need to have all of that information gathered in one place, so that if something happens to you or a key employee, you're covered. It's no different if you're doing it for an individual or a small business or an entrepreneur. Getting organized and getting your paperwork and your systems together is really critical.
I mean, I still do some coaching on, like, for individual, like self-employed or those kind of people, where we basically teach them how to do systems. Because if you don't have a system that defines what a job is and what that job does, how do you even hire to that job? Because you don't even know what it is. And then how do you train to it, or how do you hold it accountable? You can't. So you have to have, here are the steps to go through that, or you can't do the other two effectively.
Yeah. Even something as simple as I create websites for people on occasion, and I always create a document of, all of the critical pieces, like where's your domain listed, who hosts your website, how do you get in and actually access that kind of information? How do you do some simple things like post in your website or create a page, or, simple stuff that most people don't do very often. So if it's written down somewhere, that those directions make it so much easier for people to step in and fill it in and get stuff done without trying to create it from scratch. It really is. It is important.
That's why a lot of times, I was in the real estate business for years, and I was coaching realtors and their team, and a lot of team leaders, and probably small brokerages as well, are terrified of their admin, because their admin is the only one that knows how to do anything. And if they leave, they don't even know how to get into their website, that type of thing. So it's, that happens a lot in small business. So.
Oh yeah, it does. So, I'm happy to help.
Yeah.
Any way I can. But the sweet spot for me right now is really working with families and folks who really just need some help getting started. Even if it's just a couple of phone calls that say, okay, here's what to do. If you have a question about something, you can email me, or, give me a quick phone call, and we can resolve an issue very fast, rather than waiting until it gets to the point where it's a disaster. I know I had a client that I work with, her mother was in a nursing home and she wouldn't fill out the Medicaid paperwork. And so she kept getting denied and having to pay the bill herself. And it was just a matter of filling out the form every month and sending it in. And once we got her working, got through the backlog, it became a simple process for her. So it's, it's helping people get through some of that legal gobbledygook that nobody really wants to pay attention to.
Well, it's a huge one. So you might want to show your, I'll put your name and your address, your email address and stuff on the phone number on the email or the
Whoops.
on the YouTube when it goes out as well, so people will have it. But anything else you want to say before we wrap up? It's been great. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us and helping people. And I'll tell you what, you might be costing me money if I don't have to go there and clean up all these messes for people, but I'm sure that it would make my job easier. So, if you have people organized.
Yep. And it saves it, even for just peace of mind. It's a huge benefit and helps reduce stress for people who, when their family members are ill or there's an accident or something has happened, stress can really make it difficult to get through whatever it is that you're dealing with. If you can lower your stress by having all of this in place ahead of time, it'll make your life a lot easier.
Well, Deb, thank you so much for sharing with us. I appreciate it. And I'll have this video up on the website and I'll have a copy for you to use however you like here shortly. So
thank you.
Thank you very much.
For talking to you. Take care.
Bye, y'all. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Sounds good. Well, hang on. Oh, that's weird. We're still here. Hang on a second. I'll see if I can get us turned off. There we go.